r/AskReddit. Doctors of Reddit, what's the biggest case of faking it you've ever seen? Had a patient come in for a fall who now couldn't move their legs at all. Did a bunch of tests. Didn't find anything. The patient was not at all fazed by suddenly being paralyzed, which was the first red flag. Didn't really believe anything was wrong, but the patient was still not moving their legs. My options are to admit for a huge workup or get them to walk. So I update them saying everything is fine. Tests are negative. You can go home. Patient gets up, gets dressed and walks out without a word. Dermatologist here. Patient was convinced she had a melanoma and needed a biopsy and would need to be on workers' comp. I told her it looked like ink from a marker. She demanded a biopsy. I wiped the area off with an alcohol swab and showed her the ink and that there was no spot on her skin anymore. She stormed out threatening to sue. I'm just glad I cured her melanoma. Taking trauma call during surgery residency. Had a prisoner come in after a fight and claimed he couldn't move or feel his legs. All the CT scans and MRIs were normal, but we would shield his legs so he couldn't see them and poke them with needles and other sharp objects. With enough force to cause pain, he never flinched or moved his legs at all. He was diagnosed with SCIWORA, spinal cord injury without radiographic abnormality. He stayed in the hospital for a week. No improvement. Always had one guard with him. One night they were down in the lobby watching some television, but the guard needed to use the restroom. The patient said, "Where could I possibly go? I am paralyzed." Guard left him alone for 2 minutes. Patient last seen sprinting down the road. Naked butt cheeks flapping in the breeze. Made it to a city 4 hours away by car before he was caught again. I have never seen anyone fake it so well. Truly playing the long con. We had a patient faking a seizure, so my supervisor told one of us to get the brain needle. The patient made a miraculous and swift recovery without intervention. That's the best part about most of these stories. When they make up some form of fake machine so that the patient stops faking. Cracks me up every time. Not a doctor but worked in healthcare for nearly 20 years. While taking a break from the ICU due to it being emotionally draining, I worked in home health for a bit. I had a patient who clearly had Munchausen syndrome. On a daily basis she would call her insurance to see what things would be covered if she was diagnosed with this or that. She called her doctor's office an average of 5x during my shift with her. She would report all kinds of non-real symptoms. She pestered the doctors into do exploitive laparoscopic surgery. Of course nothing was found. One day I walked in and she was rubbing her incisions with rotten cabbage trying to get it infected. She wasn't seeking pain meds, except to sell. Really, she was just as happy with antibiotics or stool softeners. Anything. As long as they wrote her a prescription and she got to go to the pharmacy where she did a whole song and dance for them too. Claiming allergies and reactions. She always increased the exaggeration of her story too. One time she fluttered her eyes after making sure I was looking and said she lost consciousness in that half a second. She called the doctor and claimed she lost consciousness for 5 minutes. She called the insurance and claimed it was 10 minutes. She called the pharmacy and claimed it was 30 minutes. Then she called 911 and told them she woke up on the floor after losing consciousness for 4 hours. The worst thing about her was she was a mom. Her son was 28 at the time, and by all the stories of his childhood illnesses and all her saying how he is severely disabled, I knew she basically fucked up his childhood with Munchausen by proxy. She portrayed him as being severely disabled and that's why he would never find a wife. I met him. He was healthy and of average intelligence. He wasn't looking for a wife. He was gay, but she refused to accept that. Working with her was so miserable that I took a couple years off from any and all healthcare after that. Young 18 to 20 woman went running into small rural hospital pretending to have abdominal pain. Police officer had tagged her going 40+ km over the limit, which was stunt driving as per the new law in Ontario, impound and license suspension automatic. Cop followed her into and apparently said he'd be waiting for her when she left. Locum staff such as myself were housed at a small B&B about 15 minutes away. and the had pre-printed order sets to be done before we arrived. When I arrived, she flat out admitted that she just came in because she freaked out and didn't stop. I told her we'd give her 45 minutes to call her parents' family before I booted her. Except, BHCG came back positive, and subsequent ultrasound came back showing extremely early ectopic. Officer figures out something is up when he hears air ambulance call come in over radio. She was completely asymptomatic and just worked out that she dodged both charges and a life-threatening issue by accident. It was definitely a WTF moment. Edit. Well, this blew up overnight. I got a few messages. A little more info. Small rural hospitals in northern Ontario often service areas from more than an hour's drive away and still only have a catchment area of 2,000 to 3,000 people. When on call, it was just that. We would do our days in the community clinic, then maybe hospital rounds, then go home and be on call. We wouldn't be at the hospital, there wasn't an on-call room where you would stay, for example. There were lots of times that you'd go a full night without being woken up. Or maybe just a call from the acute care inpatient wing. Locums were short-term contracts for places that didn't have full-time medical staff for whatever reason. It's hard to attract clinicians if you don't even have broadband internet in the community. They generally pay very well. Reminds me of an old post where some hobo came to the hospital speaking incoherently. And they decided to give him a checkup anyway to show to the students it was a university hospital. And he turned up to have some issue with the liver. After they treated him, he became lucid, and turns out he was a professor on his way to a lecture when his liver stopped functioning properly and he couldn't think clearly because of that, so he was just wandering the streets for a while. Physical therapist here. Working mom comes into the clinic with her infant in a stroller. She's limping like she's got a nail in her foot. Wincing in pain and tears in her eyes. She's crying during her visit with the PT. None of us think she's faking it. She limped out of the clinic. I glanced out of the window and saw this woman bounding down the sidewalk. Hips swaying, full stride, going places. We were all fools. To what end did she fake an injury? Sympathy? You guys don't prescribe, right? No, but my money would be on trying for some 7-figure lawsuit payout. Which involves playing the long game. Amateurs. For a 7-figure lawsuit. You even limp in the shower. That limp would become part of me. Sorta along the same idea. Working at a pharmacy, we saw a guy come in to try and get a refill on some pain meds that had no refill. After pleading that his ear really hurt, we told him again we couldn't refill it. One of the other employees saw his step into a side hallway and take a pencil and jam it forcefully into his ear repeatedly. Drawing blood. He calmly left and went to the He came back a few hours later with a prescription for pain meds. My brother was an EMT for 2 years and he told me this. People will try to use the ambulance as a means for transportation from Fulton to Oswego because the hospital is in Oswego. By faking seizures. Sometimes when the head EMT guy was feeling fun and knew that the person was faking. He'd say something like, "Man, it's weird that he's having seizures but not peeing himself." Apparently the person would kind of snap out of it for a second. Weigh up the repercussions. Then either pee themselves or stop faking. I thought that was hilarious. We had a family calling for a Medicab, a cab paid for by income-based insurance, from somewhere out in the sticks to our in a college town. Every few weeks or so, the mom would be seen for some ailment or the other. And the rest of the family would go to Walmart, go to the mall, do all their in-town errands. She was basically faking an emergency illness every few weeks so they wouldn't have to pay for a cab to get their shopping done. Had a patient when I was an intern feigning blindness. She would constantly be playing on her smartphone, only furiously trying to hide it when someone from the care team came into her room. The best was when my attending one day strolled past her room and threw his hand up in a highly exaggerated hello wave. She started to throw her arm up to but caught herself halfway through. Then threw her hand back into her lap and pretended to be staring off into nothing. I would never have expected pretending to be blind to be such a commonly faked issue. But reading this thread has changed my mind on that issue. I didn't know it was common either. We have a guest at my workplace who is either pretending to be blind or exaggerates her vision loss a good deal. She once yelled out to me specifically across a room. I was standing near 3 other employees of similar height and build, all wearing the same uniform. Everyone has a story about her. A patient claimed to have all kinds of illnesses and would cough every minute or so. Have you tried coughing when you don't need to? It's like a normal cough, but you take the subwoofer away. Now imagine that. But 10 times more fake. Take the subwoofer away. Darn, it really makes sense when you put it like that. I had to do a fake cough just to double check, but yep, this is it. Nurse for an ophthalmologist here. Had a 21-year-old new patient claiming to be completely blind from a sudden and severe glaucoma diagnosis from a previous unknown doctor. Would feel around while walking. Tried to keep eyes rolled back into his head. The whole 9 yards. He said he is a famous YouTube rapper that is now unable to make videos or earn a living. I exclaimed to have heard of him before and very excitedly asked him to search and show me his YouTube channel on my phone so that I could subscribe. He took my phone out of my hand and effortlessly found the YouTube app and typed away in the search bar. Oh, and of course his eyes were back to normal and focused. One time my roommate, who is an ICU nurse, came to see one of my indoor soccer games. During the game, a player on the other team went down hurt and starting screaming in pain and swearing and rolling around while holding his ankle before he was eventually helped off the field. He then limped over to where the fans sat and watched the rest of the game brooding in silence before he left early. After the game, my roommate told me he was going to go over and see if there was anything he could do to help. Until he saw that the guy was limping on the wrong leg. Ophthalmology technician. People pretend to be blind all the time. Go to check their eye pressure with the Tonapen, a device you poke them directly into the eye with, and they go, "What the duck is that thing?" I have a sort of opposite angle story for this one. A friend of mine is completely blind. As in, eyes removed as a toddler blind. She had a rare cancer. She's worn glass eyes her whole life to keep the sockets from sinking in, as well as to limit the jarring appearance. Well, she had a new doctor she was seeing, so to speak, to get fitted for new glass eyes. I think that was why. When the tech brought her in, they told her they had to examine her eyes. And asked her to read the vision test chart. She kept trying to explain she is blind. And they were stuck on examining her. Whoa, your pupils aren't responding. No shoot. She finally got so frustrated. She popped one glass eye out and said, "Here. Now you can check it out all you want." She apparently always would pull that gag on folks doubting her and or teasing her. She's awesome that way. Edit. Whoa. Stepped away for some dinner and came back to find this comment about my awesome friend getting a flood of upvotes. She will love that. A few details I don't know much more about this story, as she was telling a series of "oh my god, are you serious" encounters she's had during her life. And this was my favorite. Second favorite is probably the cop who showed up unexpectedly at her house. Turns out the call was for next door and insisted she had to be high as hell because her pupils were dilated in bright light. Yes, this was definitely a tech and not the doctor. And yes, her glass eyes are amazingly realistic, and I had no idea at first. She also endures regular bullshit for her guide dog, S. She's on her 3rd or 4th I think now. A very large and sweet German Shepherd I want to pet so bad but can't just yet. He's too friendly with strangers, that's great normally. But she doesn't want to be yanked across the room, sidewalk, street because he wants to be your new best friend. She got serious flack at an airport, want to say it was Denver, way back pre-9/11, because at the time they were insisting the dog couldn't go on the plane with her. Made her miss her flight. She has sworn never, ever to go through that airport again. And now people with pseudo-support dogs really piss me off because their little untrained purse-riding puffballs lose their chute barking and launching at her 100-pound shepherd that spent years getting certified. Edit 2. Thank you for the silver. Nurse. Bringing a patient back to a room who said he had kidney stones. I had him stop at the bathroom and get a urine sample. Dude comes out with the specimen cup that literally has a piece of concrete in it. Looked him in the eye expecting some sort of joke. He was serious. I threw it away and walked his numbskull back to the waiting room to contemplate his stupidity. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please support the robot revolution by smashing the like button and subscribing to the channel.